You have to introduce yourself.
Yes, I do. So load up, Bertie. I don't know how to run this as formally as you should, so let me welcome, first thing we have to take a roll call.
Yeah,
right?
so I'll do the roll call.
Okay. Who's doing that?
I will do that. Okay, so for our private members, we have Bernard Rosen,
Present.
Mark Kaplan,
Present.
Bud Larson,
Present.
and for our public members, representing Comptroller Scott Stringer, Jacqueline Thompson.
Present.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum.
Yes, we do.
Oh, thank you.
Now, we have the minutes. Anybody have any comments on the minutes? If not, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to
approve. Yes, that's done. Now, we will have the presentation, my favorite organization, New York City Housing Authority. And I will have to recuse myself because I'm a member of the audit committee. So would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm PV and I've got a bunch of people from Deloitte and from the authority here, so we'll go around doing the introduction. I'm PV Anantharam, Chief Financial Officer for the New York City Housing Authority.
I'm Reem Samra. I'm a managing director from Deloitte.
I'm Greg Koslow. I'm a partner with Deloitte. I lead our local public sector practice.
I'm Darshan Patel from Single Audit for this night.
I'm Danny Fiber, Controller at NYCHA.
Trisha Roberts, VP of Finance.
Tricia, I don't think you pushed the button. Can't hear you.
Kelly McNeil.
The Vice President, Legal Affairs and General Counsel, NYCHA.
Good morning, I'm Carolyn Jasper, Vice President of Operations with NYCHA.
And on the right, we have the representative of our auditors.
Is the mic on? I don't know.
Yeah, on the right, we have the representative of our auditors. So who's going to kick it off?
I will kick it off and hand it over to Danny, who's our controller. Danny has been with us for a long time, has been the architect of many financial statement documents. He has, of course, announced this year that he's going to retire, so we're going to miss him for the next audit committee. But kudos to Danny for doing a fantastic job here, as Deloitte will assert. NYCHA is big, NYCHA is vast. NYCHA has a lot of problems. NYCHA has a lot of solutions. We are, over the last couple of years, revamped the entire senior management of, almost the entire senior management of NYCHA with a ton of energy to boost, to address a significant amount of issues that have been raised in terms of a continued depletion of resources from the federal government. We've had the feds have essentially ignored inflation in many ways for the last 15 years or 18 years and have consistently not provided sufficient amount of resources to maintain the properties that we have, over 2,400 buildings, 300 plus developments. So it has been a challenge. Things have gone downhill for a while. It's back up on speed. We've got a bunch of initiatives up and running to address many of the issues that you've heard about in the press. And we're going at it gangbusters on all fronts. We had a recent agreement with HUD, the Southern District of New York, and the City of New York to provide for additional resources from the city and a systematic manner to address a lot of the ills that we currently face. One thing I will say that our finances have always been in order, impeccable, and from a HUD perspective, have always given us a high score. We've received 24 out of 25 in 2017 and 25 out of 25 this year too. So we also have a very decent cash balances. So we have never been in a place that we have to strive for money. Our long-range money goals are a different matter. And last year, late last year, we also announced a new strategy to address the continued deficit that we face in addressing our fiscal infrastructure, RAD, or PACT, as we now call it. I keep forgetting the acronym. But it's a manner of trying to figure out how to bring external equity into the picture to bring more capital that can then support our aging infrastructure. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Danny to talk about the 2018 financials, and we'll wait on your questions.
Okay, thank you.
Which one?
All right.
Eddie, you're going to need a microphone.
Yeah, thank you. Much better. Thanks. I'd like to begin by talking about some significant events that impacted the 2018 financial statements. The first was the implementation of GASB Statement Number 83 on asset retirement obligations. This statement addresses accounting and financial reporting for certain asset retirement obligations, or AROs. An ARO is a legally enforceable liability associated with the retirement of a tangible capital asset. The financial impact of implementing GASB 83 was a restatement of $52.7 million in opening net position for 2017. This restatement resulted in the recognition of an asset retirement obligation liability, mainly due to the decommissioning of fuel oil tanks. Also, under GASB 83, a deferred outflow is recognized over the useful life of the assets. As of December 31st, 2017, the asset retirement obligation liability was $70 million. The second major event was the recognition of pollution remediation obligations for lead paint and mold. Per HUD regulations, an annual lead paint inspection is required of all target housing built prior to January 1st, 1978. For NYCHA, the target housing consists of 135,000 units. Through 2018, NYCHA has completed visual inspections of all target units. The visual inspections identified areas with the possible presence of lead paint. To determine if lead paint is present in excess of legal thresholds, NYCHA has entered into contracts totaling $92 million to conduct X-ray fluorescent or XRF testing at all units built prior to 1978. NYCHA cannot reasonably estimate the range of cleanup outlays because it has not completed the lead paint testing. In addition, based on a 2018 settlement agreement, a liability in the amount of $8 million was recognized to remediate approximately 3,500 open work orders for mold. The third major event was the 2018 PAC transactions. In 2018, the authority entered into 4 real estate transactions involving nearly 2,500 units at 18 developments under the PACT, which is Permanent Affordability Commitment Together program. The total lease amounts under these transactions was $180 million, of which $20 million has been received. The authority will recognize cash received under this transaction as revenue over the shorter of the lease term or when the purchase option or right of first refusal can be exercised. In terms of the overview of the 2018 financial results, the authority's loss before capital contributions for 2018 was $268 million compared to a loss of $331 million for 2017. Operating revenues were $1.1 billion and remained virtually unchanged compared to 2017. Operating expenses increased by $296 million, attributable to the following categories. Housing assistance payments under our Section 8 program increased by $20 million, mainly due to an increase in the cost per unit compared to 2017. Utilities increased by $28 million due to increases in electricity due to price increases and heating gas due to consumption increases. Maintenance and operations costs increased by $202 million due to higher pollution remediation costs, as I mentioned earlier, mainly for the lead-based paint and mold, as well as some other contracts and material costs. Non-operating revenues and expenses increased by $361 million, attributable to the following. Our subsidies and grants increased by $233 million, consisting of an increase in the Section 8 HAP subsidy due to the increased need for housing assistance payments, as mentioned before. In 2018, the City of New York subsidy increased by $86 million, primarily to cover the cost of the XRF testing under the paint program. Federal operating subsidy increased by $46 million due to higher subsidy eligibility under the HUD formula, and an increase in the HUD proration factor. It increased from 93.1% to 94.7%. Also, in 2018, under the Capital Fund Program, we opted to take a capital fund management fee in the amount of $70 million. HUD allows us to take 10% of the grant for administrative costs. And lastly, our insurance recoveries increased by $131 million. NYCHA resolved litigation against insurers to collect the remaining policy limits for property damage caused by Hurricane Sandy. So with that, we're here to answer any questions.
Could you expand a little bit more on PACT in that you've
Sure.
identified a need, and I guess it's one of your biggest projects right now?
It is, and it stands for permanent affordability, something together. And the goal, so if you
Mike.
I'm sorry. So if you consider the fact that our surveys have indicated close to a $31+ billion in needed resources to address all the ills across our developments, we knew at the rate of financing that we get from the federal government, which averages around $300 million a year, that is never going to be a feasibility, because by the time we actually get to do things, things will deteriorate further. So we had to come up with different alternatives to provide additional boost of capital to address these issues. So the thinking is that over the next 10 years, we will have 60,000 plus units of our portfolio that will transfer over to a partnership with private developers to come in and manage the units. They will, with the conversion of the subsidies that we get from the federal government into a Section 8 type arrangement. Their Section 8, by the way, is rents to landlords that is supported by HUD based on income criteria for the tenants and the landlords. So Section 8 continues to get inflation increases every year. The Section 9 funding that we get, which is public housing funding, is flat. Has not changed for quite a long time. In fact, continues to suffer divestment from the federal government. In fact, the president's budget for next year calls for a 40% decline in the Section 9 operating subsidy that we get, which is a little shy of $1 billion. So losing 40% means we definitely have to turn to other sources. They've also eliminated capital funding into the future. Unlikely that it'll come to pass, but it is a threat that always remains. So the theory here is that we will find partners with developers to try and manage these buildings for an extended period of time that will allow them to bring private equity into the picture, that will allow them to make the improvements that are necessary to the buildings. The thinking is that, or rather the analysis is that it will address $12.5 billion of the need that we have against the $32 billion. And that would be a big change to our picture.
Beyond the concept, which sounds like a good concept,
Yeah.
what steps have you actually taken to begin to implement this, and how do you change things?
So we started with Ocean Bay, this big development of 2,300 units. I forget what the number is, but the target is about 6,000 to 7,000 units on an annual basis. If you have to hit the target of, we're ramping up, we're moving very fast on those things. We have a significant number of developments that are going to be ratted out this year. All of the surveys to date have proven positive on that front. And we're getting buy-in on a continual basis. When people see the results of the transformation in these properties that we've ratted out, there is more buy-in.
Are you implementing this under your normal management structure, or have you actually changed how?
We actually have a division, the real estate division, which works along with the HDC to try and see what kind of resources we can sort of bring into the picture, whether there are loans or there are multiple sources of funding at the federal level that can be accessed depending on the asset itself in terms of how much work is required against the total value of the building. And yes, So we're boosting those divisions. We're also increasing the community affairs division to sort of to communicate better to our residents. So it's an all-out effort. If you consider the fact that this is going to be a big part of our portfolio, as we move into this picture, we're also going to have to beef up the oversight of these developments too. In the meantime, the resources that will be available for the rest of the properties that we haven't ratted out would shrink, because the whole idea here is that you take the resources that you currently get for public housing and convert it into a Section 8 type grant to the unit itself.
It's a very interesting concept. It'd be interesting next year to see how far along
And
you've
it's
moved.
not just interesting, it seems to us that it's the only source to get to a better place. So yes, but it's going to be challenging to watch it. Not everybody will perform up to snuff, so we'll have to be diligent to make sure the residents' rights are appropriately protected.
I think this problem dwarfs most
Let's hope so.
other operational issues.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
PV,
yes.
on the subsidies and grants, you have a city of, well, first of all the projects have been, for want of a better term, federalized, right? There are no more city or state projects.
Almost all of them.
I'm
There are
sorry?
still almost all of them. There are still around 3,000 units that we still have to convert and complete the work on to
Before the
meet,
feds will take them over?
The feds will take them over. No, the PACT program will take some of them over, but we will get Section 8 for those
I'm not
units.
talking, no, on page 97.
Yeah.
You have a nice schedule of the subsidies and grants.
Yeah,
I think it's important that we go over that a little bit.
sure.
The Section 8 housing program, we know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And the federal operating subsidy, I presume, is the CD block grants, right?
No, this is the Section 9 public housing funding.
So it's not CD money?
That's not CDBG, no. That is, we have a separate dedicated funding source for public housing.
Speak into the mic.
There is a dedicated public housing funding for operation of our public housing buildings.
So that's what that is?
That's the number.
And what is the City of New York subsidies?
So the City of New York subsidies have increased over the past few years. It initiated probably early in this administration with the recognition that we don't continuously get increases in federal subsidies, so they started to fund us for the collective bargaining increases. So we've since received 2 rounds of collective bargaining increase. Our grant for the current year has been budgeted for around $280 million.
I'm confused because at one time, you got a lot of federal funds from the block grants, right? The CD funds?
I don't recall, we never got too much money from
Maybe not in your time in the agency, with due respects, but I remember it was a very big number.
That's
I'm looking at
probably
the
true.
controller. You don't get them anymore?
Well,
You
this
don't
year-
receive those funds anymore?
So last year, we got around 600,000 or so in CDBG funds. This year, we've been allocated close to $185 million in CDBG funds.
I don't know. And the federal capital funds used for operating purposes, it's not,
Yeah, that was what I mentioned, just getting.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, getting back to the city, I just wanted to mention that number also includes the $92 million that we anticipate getting for the paint
no,
program.
the reason is the mayor at that time met with Secretary Carson from HUD. And I thought the feds will give us more money. You're saying they're not.
The feds have not, as part of this agreement, agreed to give us any more resources. They have agreed to
No, it's
look
not.
at making things a little better, but no, we don't expect any new resources from the feds on this.
Well, if you had to project into 2019, what do you think the 2.4 billion would be?
So that number in 2019 will be higher only because the city subsidies have gone up.
Which subsidies?
The city subsidies.
Otherwise, the federal ones are
Otherwise,
flat.
the federal numbers will improve slightly, but not by a whole lot.
The reason I'm getting into it is so important for the operation of the housing authority, and
That is
there was
absolutely
a
true.
fanfare, there were signatures, so on, news conference. All right.
Yes,
The FEMA money has to do with Superstorm Sandy?
that is
But
correct.
still,
This number here is not the total FEMA money we're getting. It just represents the money we're getting to cover certain operating expenses like utility costs on the mobile boilers. That's what that number there represents. The actual resiliency money we're getting is reported not under subsidies, it's reported under capital contributions.
all right.
Yes.
And the Section 8 program has not increased much, it's pretty flat, is that it? About how many residents or apartments do you have in the Section 8 program?
The last number was around 86,000 leases on section.
18,000
86, yeah,
residents.
north of 80,000, yes, that is correct.
80,000,
How much?
And
north of 80,000.
North of 80, okay.
And as we convert more of our public housing properties into the new program, they will also be converted to Section 8.
All right.
My lips are sealed.
No,
Any other questions?
no, I have a few.
Please go ahead, Bernie.
When you get into the statistical section,
What page are you on, Bernie?
well, they used to issue it separately as a booklet. Now they bind it in with the annual report, I guess. They figure it's easier.
Yeah.
Let me get to it. They call it the schedule of demographic,
We're on page 141.
no, where is it again?
141.
Please bear with me. Okay.
There's a lot of interesting information in this book.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I think that data is quite helpful in those schedules. I'm just trying to get where you get to the number of residents and the various.
149, Bernie, something like that. That's the employment status anyhow.
Yeah.
It's the
Page
number-
143. Page 143 gives you the total number of families,
Yeah,
the population, the
well-
family size.
I guess you show a decline. I looked at it late yesterday. You show a decline in the number of residents in the public housing properties. I was just curious as to why.
Do you remember which page?
Ma'am, maybe you could answer it.
Excuse me, sorry.
We talk about affordable housing.
Where are you, Bernie? What page are you referring to?
Ah.
146 is the one that shows the drop in the housing population.
I mean, there's some very, very good data here, and
Yeah.
you know,
Are you referring to page 147 where the decline in the number of people receiving public assistance is?
well, no,
No.
I'm sorry.
Well, take a minute and try to find it, Bernie, so we can.
No worries.
There has been a decline in the number of residents in the public housing projects.
So the only declines that are there in public housing would be a result of the RAD program. of the new program that we've come up with, which would be a partnership with
To
developments.
mediate certain issues.
Exactly. So that would be the only decline. Otherwise, there should not be a decline in the total number of families. There are declines in the number of families at NYCHA who receive public assistance, but that is purely a factor of the work that happens at HRA.
Am I reading, page 146, is that the population of your residents?
Yes.
So that's the modest decline over the last,
And
Which
I noticed
is
that
rather consistent. The only thing I can think of in this making a difference would be that there are apartments waiting to be leased out. So there may be some fluctuations in the total number of apartments waiting.
And there was quite a decline over the years, well, in the full-time employment. Is that a particular program that you, go to page 156.
Yes, that is the headcount that we currently have planned for, that we currently have.
Well, my question, PV, is it's been a decline over the years. Is there any particular reason, any program?
Well, the big reason is a lack of resources available to maintain the headcount that we
So
have.
you'd like to have more people, but you don't have the money to pay for it?
Yes, there's no question
In
about
simple
that.
terms.
There is no question about that. We do believe, though, that this year, because of the city's support, that we are in a better place than we were before, and we expect that headcount to go up next year. So-
No, it sounds like, to me, like the city subsidy on the subsidies and grants is about the most flexible thing you have.
That is
But the
correct.
feds are pretty fixed, you're saying, and
So the one change to the federal structure has been, this year Congress has been really active in giving us more federal resources. So this year, in 2019, we expect to get another $50 million in federal operating dollars.
so you do expect more?
About $50 million, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
They also increased the available capital resources from what used to be an average of about $300 million to about $500 million. So we're getting more capital funds after probably about the last 10 years of depletion of resources. This year and last year, we got more capital funds. Although the president's budget for next year is zero. So,
All right, that's,
Anybody else have any questions?
okay.
no, I was just going to say, if, all right, well, then the city subsidy has really been very important to the authority.
as part of the agreement, the mayor committed to $2.2 billion over 10 years to address
3.2 billion,
2.2 billion.
2.2 billion.
In addition to that, they had already been giving us close to $1 billion of resources over the 5-year plan. So this mayor has particularly committed a lot of resources to NYCHA than in the past.
Okay. Whether they're city projects or not, doesn't matter. He just really felt
Yes.
it was so
They're
important.
dedicated, a significant amount of those resources are dedicated to addressing structural issues across NYCHA.
Okay.
Anybody else? Thank you for the delegation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you
Wait,
all.
wait, I should say, does anybody have anything to say about the report to management?
You have a management report,
Management
yeah.
letter. The only comment I think safe to make is I always understood that the city had some kind of a rule that everything was double-sided.
This is
Am I right?
Danny.
Yeah.
This is the good thing about it is
I
that
couldn't resist.
the authority is still a little independent from the city. So,
Well, this is Deloitte, actually.
there you go.
Comment taken.
The final document will definitely be single-sided. I mean, double-sided.
If there's nothing else, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
I was just going to, is anybody here from Deloitte?
Yes.
Pretty much the authority is going along with your management improvement recommendations, so there's no real issue. Okay.
That is correct.
All right.
Well,
I don't have any more questions then.
all right. Thank you all for coming very much. I'll see you soon. Another soon to close. Okay. Now we have the city deferred compensation
Oh, that
program.
I see.
And
They used to have somebody different. They used to,
who's coming?
well, they used to have Ernst and Young, didn't they? No. For a while, okay.
I've lost the knack of whistling. It's a real problem for me. It's one thing my dog responds to if I whistle.
If not for the city, they'd really be of service.
Bernie, if you just look at the fact that there's 30 billion, let me get off this thing, turn it off. You look at the fact that there's $30 billion worth of maintenance that's got to put in.
This still has to be done.
Where's that money coming from?
I have no
And
idea.
every year you delay it, the estimate is that by the time it gets done, it'll be 50 billion. Because they take every year.
With the
it gets-
inflation.
Yeah, so that's why that note is in the transmittal letter.
I mean, there was such a fanfare that they
Well,
would give money to feds.
The money
They give
is
Kinnan.
staggering.
I don't know.
Filling the seats starting from here?
Every year it goes on and on.
Mics are on. Make sure the mics are on.
Mic.
Make sure your mic is on. Okay. Go ahead. Yes, there is.
Okay.
Well, I'm free now to talk. Welcome, everybody.
Good morning.
We now have the deferred compensation plan, folks. Would you mind introducing yourselves, please?
Is this on? Okay. Good morning. I'm Beth Kushner. I'm the Deputy Director of Administration for the Deferred Compensation Plan.
Joan Barrow, the Chief Accountant, Deferred Compensation Plan.
Thomas Rigg, partner, Clifton Larson Allen.
And Tim Rowell, manager, Clifton Larson Allen.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, who's going to start this off?
Okay. This is the 2018 Deferred Compensation Plan audit, and the combined fiduciary net position decreased from $20.3 billion in 2017 to $19 billion at December 31st, 2018. The plan had a combined net loss of $0.8 billion during 2018. That compares to $2.4 billion in income during 2017. The stable income fund was the sole positive investment option in 2018. Participants' deferrals of compensation and rollovers exceeded $1 billion in 2017 and 2018, and the total participants increased by approximately 10,000 members during 2018. Yeah, that's
The investments did pretty bad in all of them.
pretty bad, yes.
Yeah.
Well, but my guess is that the first months of this year probably recaptured a lot of that loss, right?
I have a few.
That is correct.
It would be fun to have that right next to it to show it off.
Would have been nicer
We'll
to
bring it
report
next-
that.
You have different investment advisors for the different products?
The plan has a few investment consultants that we work with, and they review the performance of the funds and report them out to the board on a quarterly basis.
Presumably, they help you pick the money managers who run your money, right?
Yes, the board, when it does searches, it works with the consultants to do those.
You would say that the poor performance was generally in line with the rest of the,
Yes,
Economy.
most of the funds were very similar to their benchmarks.
I'm sorry?
The funds, their returns were very similar to their benchmarks.
Yeah.
And on the 457 plan, the stable income fund is still the most popular investment vehicle?
Yes, no, I'm sorry. For the 457 plan, the equity index was 5.4 billion compared to 4.9 billion for the stable income fund.
On the equity index fund?
The equity index fund,
That's
right.
become very popular?
That is
They
now-
like losing their money, I guess, all right.
I
They
have,
need it for their retirement, but they want to shoot the craps with the rest of the market.
Bernie,
I don't know.
okay. Let me make a couple of comments. In some of these instances, you seem to have very minor amounts of money in various vehicles.
What page?
Well, let's start off with page 34.
Mark, talk into the mic.
You have single-digit investments in some of those funds, and that can't be an efficient way to put money to work.
Well, some of them, they just have to close out the funds. It's the ones that have small amounts, they will close out those funds this year.
Oh, I
So,
see.
Yeah, they
So it's
just
not a-
have, it's
So you
residual.
have a policy of not taking people into such small things, I take it.
You're referring to the bond fund?
Any of them, there are
Okay.
lots of funds here.
The bond fund was transitioned this year to an index, to a passive fund. So that was done over time and not all at once. So that just finished up this year.
Well, your international equity fund, for example, shows it's in thousands. So it's $7,000 in the fund.
Right, that's just residual. It will,
These are the tag ends, is that it?
right, dividends, that's left in the fund, and they will be closed out this year.
Do you have a policy about the minimum size you go into a fund?
Well, this is a fund that was closed. It's
No,
closed.
I understand that, but when you invest in something, do you say, I will only go in if I have more than a certain number of dollars in that fund?
That's really a board decision.
But is there a policy? That's what I'm asking.
No.
Okay. I'll get a little technical with you. If you look on page 24. 24, there are three different styles of referring to gains and losses here. And I wonder why in the 457 plan is different than the 401K when you're talking
Mark,
about,
you gotta talk
you're
into
talking
the
about
mic.
the same thing.
The text,
Yeah.
that's where I write it. I probably didn't think of that it was inconsistent, but I will make sure that it's consistent.
It would, I think so.
I'll make sure that it's consistent next year.
Then, I only to point out there's a missing capital T, but I'll give you that. The city. But there are a couple of other things I had to talk about. Are you satisfied that the administrative expenses as a percentage of the assets are as efficient as you can be? I didn't have a chance to compare, I didn't think of comparing the cost of administering your funds with the cost of administering other similar funds. Are you roughly the same, better or worse?
I'm not sure.
And do you
The
monitor-
management fees,
talking about the
the
four-
management fees or the administrative expense?
Both.
What page?
Oh, I'm sorry. Give me a minute. All I remember is that there's a line for your administrative fees and a line for money management fees. And I ask whether you monitor those on a comparative basis.
Yes. The money management fees, when the board goes out to bid for a manager, they ask for best and final pricing. They also ask them to give them the best pricing based on all the assets that they hold with the city, including the
Good.
pension funds. So we do get extremely competitive institutional pricing.
That's very good.
The fees to your members, what is the current structure for that now? for their
It is $20 per quarter, and if the board, and has historically with giving a fee holiday during the fourth quarter of the year, if it finds it doesn't need the money for the administrative expenses. And then there's 4 basis points on the assets.
And that fee is basically covering the administration cost of the deferred compensation plan?
Yes, it's completely
The-
self-funded program.
The fees of the individual investments are within the returns.
Yes,
That's correct, yes.
yes.
Okay, you do something which I always have trouble with, let me tell you. You refer to the investment in the income being something. Part of what you call income is the stock market appreciation or depreciation of your assets.
That's
Where
correct.
I come from, income is dividends and interest, and the other one is appreciation or depreciation of securities. And I come from a situation where you're mixing up apples and oranges then. Is there a reason why you conflate the two?
We used to have it separate, and as a matter of fact, I do have to separate it for the comptroller's office. Someone calls me every year, and I break it out for them. But Mark spent it before they decide to combine the two numbers.
That was a prior auditor.
I know we attacked them on the point last week or something.
Yeah,
It's just, I know accountants do it, but income to people who read it typically is dividends and interest.
Correct. It's for a fiduciary fund under GASB. They've decided that they wanted the presentation to be consolidated. But to Joan's point, I mean, I'm not in disagreement with you that you would like to see interest and divs, but separated from unrealized gains, if you will. Everything is kind of consolidated in that.
You're really not getting the right picture then.
Correct. You're probably right. In this case, these are mutual funds, so there are some dividends and an interest, obviously, in those bond funds. But from a GASB perspective, everything's combined to say, here's the gains or losses of the fund.
If you said gains or losses, I'd have less trouble than calling it income.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
Well, I wish you'd look at that. We had this up with somebody else, and they said they were thinking about changing it.
And again, we can happily break that out if you like.
Listen, we're only looking at it, and I think you have to think about it.
Yep.
But I think if you're looking at as an investor, you're very much interested in the split between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's an important point when you're looking at the statements of the various cities' pension funds. When I look at them, tend to see what's the dividends and interests versus the benefits payable. Otherwise, they have to sell assets. And I can remember a number of years ago what they had to do with them. They have to sell assets. They tend to sell the fixed income portion of the portfolio.
Well, you're fortunate. You're not a taxpayer.
I appreciate the GASB, the appreciation and so on of the cash runs the railroad.
In reading through the
Remember
statements,
that.
I didn't see any significant
Sir,
change in the
cash
operations
runs
of
the
deferred
railroad.
compensation.
Absolutely.
And
Wait,
dividend-
hold one at a time.
In reading through the statements, I didn't see any significant changes in the operations of the
The
deferred
thing-
compensation
Wait a
fund
second,
this year.
Bernie.
That's good.
No, there were no
And
changes.
basically, most of the investment opportunities were maintained. There wasn't any significant change in that area either, correct?
I think the only change was the bond fund is now a passive fund.
But the bulk of the investments
Correct.
were continued as is.
That is
Yes.
correct.
I guess for the audit committee and even to where it's about cash flows. In this instance, this is participant money, so this isn't the defined benefit.
No,
plan,
I
right?
could understand. Joan, do you have a schedule of the number of people in each plan, 457, 401? I think you alluded to it.
We have, the schedule is in the transmittal letter
What page, dear?
on page 8.
Page 8?
Yes.
I looked late last night and
Yeah, Bernie. Wow, Bernie.
so the 457 plan is still the most popular of all.
That is correct.
And even if you're getting new participants, no, they're going to the 401K, some of them I see. At one time, you do a pretty good job, I think, communicating to your members. You point out the pitfalls of some of the plans as well as some of the advantages.
Yes, the 457 is
Of course, they're
also
gonna
the
use
older
this towards
plan.
their retirement, that's important.
Right. It's the older plan, and there's some distribution differences, so a lot of the uniformed employees will go into the 457 because there's no minimum age in which they can start receiving benefits. Unlike the 401K, there's 59 and a half, or there's a penalty. There is no penalty in the 457 plan.
I was around when this plan started in the 80s. We were active. And you could only offer the 457 plan because that's what the state offered. Mario Cuomo, when he was governor, wanted to do something for the state's managers, and he came up with this. You had the 403 program for teachers and hospital workers, and then when we first started, you could only do it for managers, then for uniformed forces, and then, but I think it's important to communicate to the future participants, and I don't know how to put it, but you're going to use this towards your retirement, be careful. And a lot of private sector employees, it's all 401K. There's no such thing, and I think you just got to tell them it may go to hell with in a handbasket someday, not because you wanted to, but because of extraneous forces. And I think it's important that, and again, it's your plans, your administration, to meet with your investment advisors.
I'm sure they do, Bernie.
I remember I was doing some consulting after I retired from the city at the MTA pension plans. Small cap stocks must be the most volatile thing there is. And if they do well, they become big cap stocks. So I almost wouldn't want to offer that to people. It's just too volatile, even mid-cap a little bit. But I remember talking to some of the advisors from the small cap fund. I says, well, let's say the stock is doing well and then it becomes large cap. So why bother with it? I guess that's what I'm saying.
Okay. Bernie, let me go back to a career when I used to sell that stuff.
You know, you gotta tell people, they're not high earners, they're city employees, and I'm sure they're going to a lot of trouble to put aside some money for these programs. Got to tell them to be careful, I think is what I'm trying to say. I don't know if I'm putting it properly or not, but some of that stuff is terrible.
I would like to hit you with a couple of minor things, too. They're curious. You list on page 40
That small cap is the most volatile.
foreign currency holdings, and I couldn't figure out why they were listed the way they were. It's not alphabetical and it's not by size. What are you saying by why you list them this way?
No. Yeah,
Is
They
there- is
really,
there-
I think that's just how JP Morgan, it's a table that JP Morgan provided for foreign currency holdings.
I understand, but again, I'm not, usually there's some order to them for when you see this in other, it's up to you what you do with it, but I just say to somebody who reads a lot of these, it sort of sticks out.
Okay.
Because sometimes you're giving a message. And it's interesting to see that there are one or two that show up in a lot and we're not here. In the foreign currency, for example, there's no Israeli paper here. And then let me go back. This is some language. I just give you my markup, and you can take a look at it.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
No sense taking time for just words. I, who don't read this sort of thing for you sort of people, thought this is a very good statistical compilation. And it says a lot, it gives you a lot of information of the kind you'd want, so. The one I couldn't understand either, on page 50, the last sentence says there were planned investments in the brokerage window. What's the brokerage window?
The plan offers, a lot of defined contribution plans offer what's called a self-directed brokerage window, and they allow participants to take a portion of their assets and invest them outside of the plan. And in our case, it's mutual funds or ETFs.
I saw that, and that's what brokerage window means.
Yes.
Wasn't that word?
They
I
want,
read.
those participants who want more options or want to be able to select their own investments other than what the plan
And
offers.
that's an understood concept.
Yes. Then we have
Okay.
a very small percentage that
No,
do
I
that.
saw that. Just I wasn't familiar with the term.
I was curious again on page 8, where you have investment option, like 2005. Those are not yield, those are just this, like 2010, what is that, a particular investment option?
Yes.
That's,
It's
it's not a year, it's a number of an investment option.
Yes, if you go into the beginning of the report, there's a glide path that shows all the portfolios. And what that does is allows participants to choose a portfolio based on the years in which they think they'll be contributing or before they start taking their money out of the plan or their age. These are
What page
called-
did you refer to?
It's the,
It's the back of the cover.
it's right
First
before
page.
the table of contents. And those are very popular. They're called target date funds or age-based funds. And basically, participants can choose a portfolio, and they don't have to kind of manage their own portfolio. It's done for them, and they get less, and to your point earlier, they get less aggressive over time. They actually get, they change from their equity position gets less,
that's
their
what everybody-
fixed income gets more, so as they reach retirement, they have what's called, the last fund is the static allocation fund, and over time, those are ratcheted down, so to speak, to fall into the static allocation.
That's standard advice.
So, Bernie, that would
So
be the
that's
fund.
the year in which they would reach retirement, is that?
They expect to retire.
Or start withdrawing funds.
And it's made up of the core fund. It's not.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
understand,
okay.
but it's not,
I have one more question apropos of the fees. If you go to page 56, the expense ratio for the stable income fund is high, in my experience. Your international equity fund is 30.36, and your stable income fund is only 4 basis points lower. That's a kind of a fund which typically has a very low ratio. I mean, your bond index fund is 0.1 and the other one's 0.05. It sticks out. I don't expect you to
I
have an
guess-
answer. I just point
No,
out, as
it's,
a reader, that one jumps out as somebody who watches these things. That's why I asked you the question before, and I'm sure you're monitoring it, but it just,
Yes, the stable income fund has a lot of different components in there. It has a liquidity component, it has bonds, and then it has
Steering
traditional and synthetic GICs. So there's a lot of different moving components that make up that fund. So we can make sure that we have liquidity available for participant distributions. Because there's a lot of money in that fund.
all the more reason to have a low ratio.
yeah.
Actually, the board is looking at the stable income fund right now.
Okay.
So it's under review.
Anybody else have?
No, so, again, you're saying if someone is going to reach retirement age in 2025, the funds will be reduced, that the income from their investment will be down 5 or 4%? Is that what you're saying? Am I reading it right?
What page are you reading it on, Bernie?
8.
Thank you.
I think it's a terrible chart, with due respect. I think it's terrible because it's confusing, and it confuses me. And you give copies of these things to your members, I think you'd scare the hell out of them.
You're talking about the return?
Yeah.
Okay. This is what the funds returned for last year? That's
For,
for 2018.
this is what they returned in 20. So, in other words, what are the years on the left?
That's the name of the fund,
It's just a name.
just the name, correct.
You ought to
We-
put a footnote to that.
We can
effect.
clarify that.
Yeah.
Maybe put the word fund.
Maybe shoot some of your investment managers also, but that's
It was a
neither here
bad
nor
year, but
there.
if you do the same report next year, those will be all positive numbers.
Let's do it right
We
now.
hope so.
The first,
Yeah.
the first 6 months of this year were gangbusters.
Yeah.
It's just a function of the market
But we'll clarify that chart. You're right, it should say fund.
I think so,
Yes.
so people will know.
Absolutely.
You don't lend securities, do you?
No, we do
No.
not.
No, well, you took a bath once on it. Okay, good, good.
If you have them in funds, you may find that your fund is lending securities.
We have all separate accounts, so I don't know. I don't think so.
I'm a believer in lending securities, so.
I remember.
Anybody else have any other questions?
That's not what it-
I will
People won't understand.
thank you all for coming. I'll give you
Is there
this.
another report? Isn't the cybersecurity theirs?
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's
That
good
was the
stuff.
Positive note.
I have it on here. I didn't bring it.
Yes.
That's okay. Yes, this is the first year,
we have
we
a
always have an
management
IT
letter.
technology report. The board felt it was important to start including cyber as part of that. And this year, we did have a cyber and a combined IT report, which was presented to you.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we, do you have an audit committee yourself?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
And is that the board committee that worries about cybersecurity for you, or the whole board?
Well, the whole board does, but part of the audit committee consists of, we have a charter that has 3 members or 3 agencies, which is the
And that's what-
controller, finance, and Office of Management and Budget.
And that's where the board vests its oversight in a sense, I assume.
The committee is responsible for looking at these financial reports and sending them and preparing them for the board, the full board.
Have you had any real cybersecurity problems? Doesn't look like that.
No, we have not.
You know what they say? Those that say they haven't, but they don't know they've had it yet. What is it? Those that have had it and those who've had it but don't know it.
Well, they also say it's not if, it's when. So in preparation, the board has directed the plan to do certain things to meet the cybersecurity industry standards and best practices. And that's what this report
That's right.
reflects.
Yeah.
In addition to the audit, sir, you were engaged to do the cybersecurity assessment.
Yes, sir.
I guess it's important because you're dealing with personal financial information, yes. All in all, you found you were satisfied with the controls in place?
Specific to the cyber thing, there's actually
Speak up.
sorry. Yes. So the answer is yes. I think we even categorized our findings by level of concern for the board in relation to best practices, and I think you can find that in the executive summary right up front, kind of, so that we did have recommendations, but none of them were significant deficiencies, in whether that be related to internal controls or
Nothing in the
cyber.
critically deficient category.
Correct. So I think there were several, and then actually further back in that report, and I apologize. Thank you. Not only do we get a little more in detail as to what the recommendations or findings were, but then also kind of where the plan is and where management is in both their response and or whether that issue has already been remediated or it's in process, and kind of a timeline as to when that would be remediated. But over to the simple answer is nothing in terms of critical was found in that cyber.
That's good.
And going into the next year, I'm assuming the board's going to ask for another review of cybersecurity?
Yes, that will be ongoing. We're also working with the City Cyber Command and with Do It to make sure that we meet. They are the ones that are issuing the procedures and the policies and the directives, and we're making sure that we are in compliance with everything, working in tandem with them.
So part of the review here is to verify against those.
Absolutely, and then also to not be redundant as to overlapping
And then
as to
look at
what the
what you
city's
also
doing.
think is best practices,
Absolutely.
whether it's in those guidelines or not.
Absolutely.
Right, and in the industry as a whole.
And keep your fingers crossed.
Very positive.
Fast Corp keeps your members' accounts, is that it?
They are the
That's-
plan's record keeper, that is correct.
sorry?
They are what's called the plan's third-party administrator or
Thank
record
you.
keeper.
Thank
They
you
have
for
all the financial statements.
You used to have somebody else, didn't you, years ago?
We've been with Fast Corp for since 1994.
How many years?
Since 1994, so 25 years.
Okay. Oh, you had somebody, I don't remember.
I presume you monitor their cybersecurity programs.
Yes, they have SOC reports that they issue, and they also have fraud protection for participants as well, and different best practices in place on their side as well.
Are you aware of any breaches in their security?
No. No.
At one time, I can recall years ago, in order to get the money before in order to withdraw funds before you retired, there had to be a hardship situation.
That's in the
And
footnotes
there was a
here.
hearing. Does that still exist, or
Yes.
that still exists?
Yes, the plan does offer loans.
I'm sorry?
The plan also offers loans. Participants can take
Okay, so
loans,
you've
but there
done
is a
that, so
hardship
that's very good.
provision as well.
That's reviewed in committee and whatnot?
Yes, that goes to the board.
All right.
All hardships go to the board.
Any more questions? Thank you very much. I'll
Thank you.
give you this, you can.
You give regards to Georgette, okay? Tell her
Yes,
you saw me.
thank you.
We definitely will. Thank you.
I know her a long time. They're doing a good job, except I'd shoot the investment.
He,
Just small caps.
Jones coming.
That
Okay.
shit, you never go.
you may not be able to read much of it, but I'm sorry. Well, you didn't have, this is all due to the efficiency of the chairman pro tem, you understand? And no agenda to speak of. Is there anything else anybody wants to talk about today?
No, I don't think so.
If not, do you have anything to tell
Want
us?
to tell us anything?
We do not. We're making good progress against fiscal 19. Other than that, there's nothing more to report at this time.
Okay, then
Okay.
we
A motion to
stand,
adjourn?
we stand adjourned. Wow.
Okay. That's good.
Oh, I should, oh, this is that.
Do we have a word as to whether when we're going to get new members?